air on the live.
Okay, just making sure.
Roger. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to CRWS Counter Racist Business Meeting on Kyrie and the Heralds, Race, Cold War, the Power of Words, Images, and Symbols on the Black Psyche. We're going through pages 250 through 260. And the date is 3/13/2022. I thought the selection of pages was very, very interesting and super constructive. And the folks who will be tuning in for the broadcast are in for a very insightful treat on concepts that we've all have been familiar with for most of our existence, but haven't thought about in this manner through the context of racism and white supremacy. The first one being the clown. I know I've always thought clowns to be something very interesting. I never saw them as a racist image at all, but Kyrie and the Herald has me quite convinced that there are some racial undertones. No, not racial undertones, but the clown is a racial and racist image. And I'm just going to read the introduction from page 250. And he says, and it starts, the clown. What is the meaning of the clown in a white culture? Is it just a creature to laugh at or poke fun at? What is the role of the clown in Western society? What are the symbols of a clown? What is the purpose of a clown? And how does it fit into the concept of racial domination? The modern day clown in white supremacy folklore is a character with big nappy hair and the style of an afro, a really big nose, a large mouth, big eyes, and great big feet. These are the physical characteristics that have been linked to Black people and a myriad of jokes and racist banter. So just this first paragraph alone made a lot of sense to me because I've seen the clowns and the big red shoes, and the big afros, and I've seen that. So that makes sense. And Black people historically have their hairs called nappy and whatnot. So a lot of logic behind these words. And then he poses some more very, very logical questions. He says here on 251, why doesn't the clown have small eyes, small nose, and thin lips? Why not poke fun at these features? The clown symbolizes Black people, and poking fun disguises racism as good, clean fun. When an innocent Black child laughs at a clown, he or she is in truth laughing at the image of Black people. This is disguised by painting the clown white to give the impression that it has nothing to do with race. The colorization has a dual purpose. It tells those whites who look or act like a clown that they are stupid and physically ugly. They are visually ugly because they then look like niggers. So this is how race and white supremacy is so powerful, because it's able to create these symbols that have multiple meanings. He says here dual purposes. Just how like in the classroom when suspected racist teachers are so-called teaching the white child, and the non-white child is always getting different messages. The white child potentially getting the message that he's supposed to be in charge, and the non-white child is getting the message that they're supposed to be subservient and mistreated. So it's very much similar to the clown concept. Perhaps this is why a lot of white people are afraid of clowns. A lot of people in general are afraid of clowns because they have been racially coded as Black people. We're living on a very, very anti-Black planet where people are trained to be afraid of Black people. I'll pause there to see if folks have anything share or add to the discussion?
Can I be heard?
You may.
In the pill. Um, I've always kind of thought clowns are. I was terrified, but just what strange character. Um,
Craig, I think you're having issues with your microphone.
I never really saw the
Well,
racial
Craig,
symbol.
your mic is like jittery. It's cutting in and out.
Can I be heard now? Is that better?
Say again.
Can I be heard now? Is that better?
I think so.
Okay. So as I was saying, so the clown, I've often seen it mistreated. I never knew the racial kind of symbolism attached to the clown. Never noticed it, but I think it is completely evident, especially with the characteristics, the butt, the hair, the lips, etc. Um, Maybe that's why I think clowns are often mistreated because it's a way for white people to act out. That's a nigger. I'm gonna mistreat. I have this character is nothing but funny and deserves to be mistreated. And that's often how they're depicted on in media too, like on cartoon shows and whatnot. Just massive mistreatment. Um, yeah, so I thought that the author pointed that out very well. I never noticed that. Never was able to associate that. Um, yeah, clowns are very strange. I think that's a strange character from the white psyche, but I think it's accurate.
Thank you, Kwaku. Very strange symbol indeed within the white culture. And I appreciate him calling this white culture, white supremacy, white cultures, synonyms to me, as far as I'm concerned. And then he decodes this concept further on page 251. He says, let's see. Okay, so I read this portion already. So it's on 251. That is also why most Black people are thought of as comical or as clowns. It is common to hear Black men referred to as clowns and buffoons. There is a real mental and social association with the concept of a clown and Black males. The large nappy hair means unruly, wild, and savage. Those with kinky hair are unmanageable and inferior. It also means that the people who have this kind of hair are viewed as clowns, inferiors, and dangerous. This is the kind of humiliation the Jews went through in Nazi Germany. One of the most talked about physical characteristic was the Jewish nappy hair or kinky hair. The closeness of the Jewish hair to that of the nigger apes was what Nazi leader Adolf Hitler took as a clear sign of racial and mental inferiority. Hitler believed that this genetic trait must be destroyed to avert the possibility of it affecting the superior white gene. He concluded that this genetic trait was a sign of inferiority and of nigger intrusion into the bloodline. The hair of Black people has been a subject of so much ridicule that many have attempted to change their hair. He then goes on to discuss how Black people mutilate their hair by like frying it, curling it, straightening it, all in a process to change their so-called nappy hair and to straight hair, white hair, because race and white supremacy is so powerful that we all have been trained to want to get closer to whatever it means to look white. And a lot of times that means mutilating yourself, putting on things to make yourself look white. And then I really appreciate this paragraph as well, because it really goes on to show just the deep programming we have been afflicted by, and even non-white people who have been allowed a lot of comfort, and who a lot of us have been confused to even call so-called successful Black people, so-called famous Black people. All of us have been afflicted with this condition of being utterly powerless and total victims in this system of white supremacy, where we are just conditioned and trained to be utterly insane, to say the least. And this should be motivating us to want to eliminate and replace the system with justice. So this was from page 252. He like combines just all this racist imagery together with just direct evidence, I would call it. He says, the same is true, and this is after he's talking about how Black people wear the blonde wigs and do all the things to look white and not look how they were naturally born, essentially. So he says, the same is true with other physical characteristics of the clown, such as the large nose. The large nose is clearly a trait that has been historically associated with Black people. Even though there are white people with large noses, this trait is not associated with them as a primary physical characteristic. The large, wide, flat noses of Black people have been the butt of many jokes. The issue of large Black noses came into question again with the revelation that the world's greatest pop performer, Michael Jackson, had his nose completely reshaped and recolored. His apparent disgust for his natural facial features was apparently so great that he completely changed his whole physical appearance. He altered his skin color, hair, nose, lips, and eyes. Legendary soul performer Patti LaBelle, in a striking interview on the Oprah Winfrey Show, said, I had that sucker cut off, a direct reference to her big Black nose. Her apparent goal is to look more European or white. And this is a message being computed in non-white minds across the globe. White supremacy is very, very powerful force. And this is why we'll see across the planet many people doing things to mutilate their bodies and reshape their bodies into something that looks white. Or if you're a white person attempting to look non-white, or to acquire non-white features. All very, very confusing, but this is how the system is designed to be very confusing and very manipulative. And I'll pause there, see if folks want to chime in or maybe share some things they've had highlighted from this section.
What do you think the overall? Oh, I'm sorry. Really quick, what do you think the overall purpose of the switching of the physical characteristics is for? It's almost as if they're trying to get everyone to meet in the middle somehow. What do you think about that?
My simple answer is I don't know.
You you explain a little bit better? I don't think I understand the question. Specifically the part about meeting in the middle. Are you saying that by having Black people wear wigs, they're trying to get Black people to wear wigs?
You know, what I'm saying is you have a large number of Black people attempting to mimic white characteristics, and then you have a large number of white people attempting to mimic Black characteristics. And what's the overall purpose for this?
I guess Sorry, but I suspect it has to do with racism, white supremacy. I think that white people, because of racism, white supremacy, they need to act like they're better. Their characteristics, their features are better than black people, but secretly, and I guess even openly, they actually love the way black people look. They love everything about black people, their hair, their 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 so-called big butts, their noses, everything about it. And then you have black people reacting to racism by covering up their hair, thinking that their characteristics are unsightly and ugly. So I guess in short, it's black people are reacting to racism, and white people are being white.
Yeah, and to add to just to add to get some semblance of our answer, I suppose I don't know if they're trying to get people to meet in the middle. I just think the business of white supremacy is profitable for non-white people to want to be mutilating themselves and paying to do so. And that being called like glamour or glamour surgery or whatever. And it's also profitable for many of white women to want to also get plastic surgery to appear to be more so-called exotic or whatever they call themselves when they look like that. So it's just that's the business of white supremacy. Mutilation has always been very profitable in this system, I suspect. So on page 252, he also gives just more decodings of the clowns. I'm just gonna go ahead and actually read here because this is more online to what we were just discussing. So for 253, lip reduction surgery among Black people has reached historical levels. The number of Blacks who hate and even talk about big lips is legion. No other physical feature has been a subject of as much laughter or talked about more than the lips. Such jokes get more laughs when told by Black comedians to Black audiences than the white clown gets by assenting big lips and spreading bright red lipstick over vast areas to stimulate large lips. So just further example of that, just the twisted projection, driving non-white people to hate their natural appearance, want to chop their lips off, make them smaller, while at the same time producing white people such as Kim Kardashians who, paid to get their lips plumped up. So it's real bizarre. The system we are attempting to counter, real bizarre. But luckily, I have not been confused in this manner. I've always have suspected and understood that hey, thin lips, it's kind of not attractive. I've heard this phrase, thin villainous lips. I don't know where I heard what film I heard this for, but it's always stuck with me. Thin villainous lips, and I suspect most racists who are operating in the system probably have thin villainous lips or just have a very villainous mind in general.
That's very interesting. You please think about where you heard that, because thin villainous lips really sticks out. A lot of them do have thin villainous lips, and also, they always try to portray Black people as monkeys or some sort of primates. But the primates, what do their lips look like? They don't look like Black people's lips. You know, most primates have those thin lips also. So look at the mind games they play with that.
Yep, twisted projection. The clown has everything, like every stereotypical feature a Black person is supposed to have: big lips, big nose, big hands, nappy hair. It's so crazy that it's always been in our face, you know. But as has been mentioned time and time again, and common racist logic, you know, many look, few will see. See what they're looking at. We've always, you know, maybe some of us understand it, or our minds understand it, our bodies may understand. That's probably why we react to clowns in a negative way. Hey, this is supposed to be some sort of racist imagery of myself. I'm not supposed to like this. Very, very odd. It's been in our faces, but I'm glad we have this text now that has allowed us to develop some clarity around this concept, clown. Allows me to understand, you know, characters like, you know, the Joker. It's the Joker, you know, one of Batman's most celebrated and glorified villains, because he's really just decoded as a non-white person. A non-white person. The only real threat, the non-white male, actually, non-white Black male, white people's, what they call the only threat to the system, or the true threat, the greatest threat. It's really, really interesting. Is it just a scary Black male? Possibly.
A masculine Black male. Why is that so villainous? Why is that?
All right, yeah, so let's see. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, so I just I guess to put the final nail in the coffin over this clown and this surgery thing that we've been discussing. I do appreciate his like his conclusion. He says, it's from 253. They have been told that big butts are undesirable. Many Black women have had nervous breakdowns and mental problems because they wanted smaller behinds and a more acceptable or white look. Many of them have spent countless hours in the exercise room hoping to reduce the butt, or have endured surgery to remove parts of their posteriors. The media and movies in particular feed us a diet of a skinny white females. These women often have no discernible behinds and appear to be as much male as female. Black women have been called hot, and many are considered physical anomalies because of the size of their buttocks. The clown represents an effort to poke fun and establish the behind of the white female as the standard for all female. This is another attack on the physical and mental being of Black people. And just to comment on it, we talked about the butts, the lips, the hair, the hands. It's also the hands and feet. Just to comment on that briefly, the hands on feet and the racist logic mind field, or just the mind of racist people. They say Black people have big hands and big feet, which decodes as Black people having big penises. You know, they often comment on athletes' big hands and big feet. There's been many famous basketball players and football players, like Shaq, for example. They were always commenting on how big Shaq was, his big hands and his big feet. And all this decodes as, hey, you know, non-white people, they're just big, Black, dumb creatures with big penises. This is just racist folklore, racist thinking, racist mentality that has been perpetuated across the planet So the clown perhaps decodes as another racist symbol of non-white people, particularly non-white people classified as Black. I don't have any more notes on the clown. I don't suspect you all do either. If you do, please share them.
So I think that part's interesting. I think largely now the mood has changed to where now you see a lot of individuals, Black, white and non-white, working to get bigger butts, and to actually acquire some of these features, bigger butts, bigger lips, etc. And it makes and I think that kind of goes back into, white people actually enjoying, they actually love the features of Black people, but behind outwardly they have to act like they don't. I'm sorry, man. So yeah, I think that's interesting. It seems like the white supremacists, now that they have heavily victimized Black people, inferiorized them to where Black people are wearing wigs, wearing blonde wigs, getting all these surgeries to reduce their to just change up their features. Now it's like it's okay. Those are the desirable features now that everyone wants to have, and it seems like it's to keep Black people kind of behind and like in this insane state, because now it wasn't okay. So now they were doing whatever it took to please master. And now master's saying, okay, now we like those features that you got rid of, we like them now. So it's like it keeps Black people in this insane depressive state, because now they are just constantly displeased with themselves. Now these features are the features that they were born with are now considered the features that they were born with that they grew up to hate are now the features that everybody loves and wants. So I think that kind of goes maybe into the refinement of racism, white supremacy, to constantly just keep Black people in this insane depressive state at all times.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think you're onto something. I think non-white people have been definitely led to be okay with their natural features, to the point where it has become it has went from appreciation to like a sexualization of our bodies almost constantly. I think a person should appreciate their body for what it allows them to do, but what has happened, what I see is that everyone, white and non-white people, have been placed on this frequency where they, hey, let's just show off how cute we are, or how sexy we are, or how we look in these fancy clothing. No one's really presenting. Yeah, it's really yeah. The way we look it just shows how vain the system is making. So I guess I want to call it ghetto glorification, but it is also refinement of racism and white supremacy. Especially, we have Area 3 that is producing a lot of propaganda, which is making it very common for white and non-white people to just think it's okay to just, like exist mostly nude, show off their nudeness. But I don't want to distract too much from I don't know if this is still even on the same topic.
I think it's important how you brought up the sexualization of I guess those traits, because usually what I've observed sorry, excuse me, what I've observed is mostly that those traits are sexualized. It's largely revolved around the hips of Black females, the butts, and other traits that are now considered sexy, like lips. So I think that's also important that you brought that up, because it's not really for any other purpose, right? It's just so that people can look more sexy. That's what the white supremacist is trying to tell us, at least how I interpret it, is that bigger butts, bigger lips are sexy. If you want to be the ultimate sex symbol, get the bigger butts, the bigger chest, bigger lips. Much like that white racist suspect on that Rips episode, that female, what is she trying to imitate? Who's she trying to look like? I don't think Black females look like that, but I guess larger butts, larger chests, larger lips has been heavily associated with Black female. Also, I think it's also important to note that these BBLs as well, there's a lot of Black females also getting them, which I don't really understand, and I think that that also has to do with trying to please master.
I think it just goes with the training. We've just been trained to do silly, stupid stuff, and traveling to another landmass to get a balloon implanted in your buttocks is very stupid and silly. So it's just how we've been trained by a racist man and racist woman. And if enough people are participating in silly, stupid, and insane acts, we are going to do it. White and non-white people are going to do it, because we live in a actual insane. We exist, because this ain't living. It's far from living, but we exist in an actual insane asylum. So, yep, I've interacted with people who have traveled to get their asses sliced off and get silicone or whatever they put inside them and their buttocks, and I could tell something has been severely severed in the thinking capacity of some of these victims, and it's tragic, but it's a learning and more motivation to want to solve this problem, because no one should be driven into such madness to where mutilating oneself is seen as taking care of oneself, self-care, glamorizing that sort of behavior. But more evidence and proof that we are living in the system of white supremacy where evil thrives, apparently. So,
indeed. Just my last point. I guess this is just for me to say, but I think as long as Black people are continuously trying to alter their appearance by wearing weaves, getting these surgeries, I think it shows a severe lack of Black self-respect in themselves and in Black people. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, the hardest pills to swallow is often those that are true. And if a group of people is attempting to not look how they are born, then something is definitely up with that groups of people. Self-respect, individual and group self-respect, whatever group self-respect looks like, just seriousness. Go ahead.
Do you all think it's a fear of a certain responsibility? Is it a certain responsibility that comes with Black people accepting their image?
Oh, of course, yeah. It's
what does it actually mean when you no longer want to subscribe to looking how the white supremacists want you to look? What sort of responsibility comes with that?
Oh, it comes with refusing to lie to yourself, and which is the only form of respect that exists on planet Earth. It comes with actually respecting yourself and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna go to this so-called beauty supply store. I'm gonna, look up some natural hair solutions. I'm gonna not, pay money to get anyone's hair on my head. I'm gonna work with what I got, which is my own hair. And I'm not gonna care about how I look. I'm gonna care about I don't know, maybe my thoughts. Maybe I'm gonna put more value into my mind and not into my appearance. I could just be rambling and not even answer the question, but
Oh
this
no,
is
you're not rambling.
so.
No, that's exactly what I was getting at because again, what's the responsibility in that? Because even with you having that particular thought process, you have to deal with how others are going to treat you, both white and non-white.
Yeah, but yeah, that's correct. But me being classified as black, whether I got straight hair or nappy hair, I'm gonna be mistreated on the basis of my color, no matter what. So I rather,
Feel a little bit
attempt.
more codified at that
Yeah,
point.
exactly. I think a non-white person they should want to be mistreated while practicing black self-respect, not not be mistreated while you're attempting to, to be accepted by the system. You're wearing their wigs, you're attempting to look like them, think like them, talk like them, and then you're still mistreated. Come on, that's embarrassing. But if I'm attempting to be codified, attempting, I'm wearing my locks, how because I choose to and want to wear my hair in that manner. But if I want to wear my hair in any other natural form on hair, that's fine. I'm not gonna be walking into a workplace wearing fancy clothes or expensive Jordans or anything like that. I'm gonna be very minimalistic and just very serious. I don't think it's serious to invest a lot of time and energy on how I look versus, how am I gonna solve these problems that don't have anything to do with how I look, but more so with people who are white choose to treat me because they have classified me as a certain, racial classification. Yeah, that was a whole mouthful, but I hope some of it computed with the folks who are listening and who will be listening to this information. Oh, I think oh yeah, so but folks, if we're done talking about the clown, we can move into the second subject that we covered in the reading, which was the slave. I would appreciate it if one of the other hosts could get us started on this section, if possible.
I can read a little bit. The slave. Uh, the symbol of the slave in white supremacist folklore is a Black person. Black people and Black history are the most dramatic symbols of human enslavement. The color Black has been largely degraded and demonized in white folklore and culture. In the majority of instances where this word is used, there are visual or verbal references to Black people here or abroad. This association and these symbols even go beyond the tales of the bondage of the Jewish children in biblical stories. The whole concept and idea of slaves, bondage, and servitude are wrapped around the enslavement of Black people in the Western Hemisphere. I didn't know how long you wanted me to keep going.
No, that was fine. That was fine. But yeah, this section, I was like, wow, this is it makes a lot of sense. It's very profound. And when I type in a Google slave, I don't see any of the images of slaves besides people who are classified as Black, which goes to show that in 2022, under the system of race and white supremacy, slave equates non-white person, especially non-white person classified as Black. I think this part is interesting, and I think a lot of non-white people, especially non-white children who are being indoctrinated in these so-called schools, I think if they had this information and K through 12 information and K through 12, I think that'd be really helpful, because I remember just just hearing about slaves, and then I already knew slave meant black when I was a child because first grade learning about slaves, second grade learning about slaves, third grade, oh guess what, black people are slaves again, and then so I've already thought, yeah, black people, our history and our existence is only slavery, man. What that did to my psyche probably wasn't constructive at all. So maybe if I knew that, hey, we live in a system of white supremacy, and if I knew the text of destruction of black self, I would have been able to plot my existence better. But because I'm just thinking, I'm just I come from a slave group of people, it really sabotaged what I could have been and where I should be. I still think to this day, because in 2022, I'm still a slave, still subjected to the system of white supremacy, still being held back from the things I want and I think I should be doing. But I'm gonna read here from 254. It says, in the modern white world, just the mention of the word slaves automatically denotes black people and not Jews, despite the many biblical legends. Slavery existed for thousands of years in many parts of the world. Slavery did not begin with the enslavement of black people. The ancient Romans enslaved the white British, the Arabs enslaved Turkish women, and the Chinese enslaved the Tibetans. There are many kinds of enslavement. So I just even that simple, nod that, hey, it wasn't just black slaves, because I'm as a young victim of racism and white supremacy, I'm just thinking, wow, black people, we didn't even fight back. We didn't even, but as you actually learn history, what actually happened, yeah, black people definitely fought back, and we definitely weren't always slaves. We had like thousands of years of existing before white people decided to begin this war against us, and during that war put us in slavery. So very, very interesting. And I'll pause my line to see if folks want to chime in.
I think absolutely in the system of racism, white supremacy, the word slave is associated with black people. One thing that I've noticed, a lot of suspected racists, especially when the discussion of reparations comes up, they always try to talk about how black people own slaves, and it's just usually a white person practicing racism trying to distract black people. Um, black from what I've observed in history, yes, slavery has existed for a long time as well. People have mistreated one another, but I think in when we talk about black people and white and being enslaved by white people, I think like a different type of slavery, chattel slavery. From what I've read, even though a lot of people had slaves, they weren't treated inhumanely. They weren't tortured. They weren't killed. They weren't raped. There was a lot of, I guess, laws in place that prevented that kind of stuff from happening. But when white people uh, enslaved black people on the planet, uh, you know, that none of that applied to them. So I think that is something that's also important to think of, to bring up. Um, so what black being synonymous with slavery, I think, he talks about this white slavery, and throughout, like O5 was saying, throughout history, you don't really see any other group of people really being enslaved. Maybe a Native Americans to some extent, but it's really just black people and Native Americans. You don't ever really hear about white people being enslaved, or even what they called indentured servitude. Like, I know throughout in my history classes, I didn't learn about any of that stuff. When you're learning about slaves, you're learning about black people. That is only black people, and on the screen that shows just typing in the word slave, only images of black people. So what is the relevance of bringing indentured servants or white slaves into a conversation about slavery.
There's just more confusion that Mr. and Mrs. technically, aka the white supremacists, pull out of their trick bag. You know, whenever we get to asking too many questions that in the end, excuse me, that in the end always implicate the white supremacists. So you never hear anything about indentured servants or slavery in this part of the world or that part of the world until you're asking too many questions about antebellum slavery. Just more confusion.
Yeah, and I have a couple of things to say in regards to how white people say non-white people have slaves too. Yeah, so-called Africans, ancient Africans, yes, had slaves who were often prisoners of war, who often were allowed to, exist amongst their captors and relative comfort. They worked for them until they were allowed to leave or until the conflict had ended. That's how the slavery played out, But when white people started their concept of slavery, it was very, very grotesque and very, very different, and you had people experimenting on people. You had people being raped and people being fed to animals and all sorts of horrendous things happening on the white concept of slavery. So even if both peoples had slavery, it was very different, and it's very incorrect for anyone to have slaves. Slavery should not exist. From the beginning, there should have been a system of justice, guaranteeing no one is allowed to be mistreated and those who need help receive constructive help. That should have been from the beginning, but for some reason it's taken us this long to even begin thinking about such a concept. So it's incorrect for anyone to have a slave, to be a slave. The concept should have never made it to the planet. Should have never made it to planet Earth, but here we are. And I really appreciate how he decodes and brings color. Color is very significant in the system of white supremacy. They've attached many different meanings to colors, and black in particular meaning power and control, but also being a color that means to be controlled, subservient, dominated, and and a color to be feared. He says here on 254, the connection of words like slavery to a specific color is part of the color and racial indoctrination. The goal is to establish a mindset that equates the color Black with slaves and regulates Black people regardless of their present social condition to slave status. In the concept of whiteness, peace and freedom are associated with white birds or white doves. Enslavement and slavery are also connected to such things as terror, blackness, and darkness. One of the dreaded symbols of enslavement and repression in the white world was the black-booted SS and the Nazi Germany. Wearing black with red emblems was designed to strike terror in the hearts of those opposed to Nazism in Germany. And then he goes on to mention like the various different jobs in the system that wear black and that are in subservient roles, like butlers and maids and Catholic priests. Catholics are supposed to be servants of their religion, so they wear black because black means serve. If you're a black thing, you're a black creature, you're supposed to be some sort of servant, I suspect. That's what this color decoding means to me. And the folks have notes in regards to the slave that they wanted to share or wanted to add to.
Can I be heard?
You may.
Oh, okay. On page 255, the words Black, slave, and servant in white supremacist culture and mindset are interchangeable terms. The wearing of Black, as in the traditional dress of the maid and butler, symbolizes servitude and obedience. If not, why not wear brown, blue, white, or red? The servant relationship also exalts the employer to the status of a controller. And that made me think about remote controllers and how most remote controllers are Black and in the shape of phallic symbols. And so I was thinking, what was the symbolism behind that to control the Black phallus? That made me think about earlier in the discussion when you were talking about athletes and how they're just big, dumb, you know what I'm saying, and how they have to be controlled. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Anyone else would like to share some notes from this portion, The Slave?
I don't necessarily think I have any more notes on this section. I think everybody has kind of gotten it for me. I agree with much of what's been said. Ultimately, the slave is associated with Black, the color Black. I did like kind of earlier in 254 when he talked about white slavery. He said during the early part of the 20th century, trafficking in white female prostitution was called white slavery. The term white slavery clearly denotes the difference between regular slavery, that is Black, and a special kind of unusual enslavement. White slavery means that white females have been forced into servitude and bondage against their will. So I thought that is also important. This isn't the only instance where I guess a word like slavery, and to kind of differentiate it from something like in order to make it sound like it's out of the norm, you attach something like white slavery to it. So when you mention white slavery, that's supposed to make people think, oh, like that's unusual. Stuff like that doesn't happen all the time, you know. So slavery is usually in slavery it's associated with Black people. In this instance, it's white slavery, and it kind of makes me think as I'm thinking about it. This Russia Ukraine stuff. A lot of these news, what I've been seeing on various platforms, is these news places talking about how Ukraine's not a so-called developing or third world country. This is an unusual thing to be happening here, which is why everybody should be concerned about it. I wonder what kind of name they'll give that. I don't think they've termed it yet as like a white war or something yet, but we all know that's what it is. But I think that it's kind of similar what they're doing with white slavery and how they're trying to make everybody care about Ukraine, right? So everybody should be concerned about this white slavery because this isn't normal. White women are not usually put into bondage against their will. Slavery is usually only reserved for Black people, just like war is usually reserved for non-white people and Black people. It's suspected and even expected for war to be breaking out where you have majority Black populations, non-white populations. It is highly unusual and unexpected to be having war where you have a population of mostly white people. So I think that these two are kind of related when I think about it.
I have seen a lot of the white supremacists attempting to get everyone to be sympathetic to the Ukraine situation. here in Dallas yesterday, I was driving along I-20, and there's like this. Usually, there's these two big gargantuan flags. One United States flag, one Texas flag. Yeah, yesterday I was driving on the highway, and there's the United States flag and this big gargantuan Ukraine flag. I just thought to myself, like, one way or another, they really want us to be sympathetic to their plight. And, you know, they control the media. They control basically how everyone thinks, or at least they attempt to.
Always gotta be sympathetic when white people are being mistreated. Never when non-white people are.
One thing that you know what, I don't want to get too far off into that, but yeah, racism as usual.
Precisely. Just the final thing I want to put out there for folks who will not be getting a copy of Race Cold War. This part is really significant, and it just puts the hammer in the nail that the coded messages are in everything, and of course a word like slave and the system white supremacy has a number of meanings, and Kyrie and Harrell does an excellent job at attempting to describe it. So on 255 he says, all things good or bad that are related to the idea of slavery, severance, or servitude is symbolized by the wearing of black. The association extends to every facet of life and a white supremacist culture. In politics, the highest elected official is the land. The highest elected official in the land is the president of the United States. He or she is considered an elected public servant. The president rides along in a long black car and is attired in mostly dark suits. The dark colors also have a very interesting connotations. The black color is a symbol of power and status in the white world. The black tie and evening dress are considered the highest and finest style. Marriage for men requires a black suit or black tuxedo, while women are married in white, which means purity. It is indeed a paradox and strange juxtaposition. However, despite the contradictions, overwhelmingly, blackness is derogatory and symbolizes such things as slavery, servitude, and evil. And I think that is very, very true in a system of white supremacy, unfortunately. More motivation to want to produce a concept known as justice. And I think that is a good time to pause for a quick attempt to kind of erase this commercial. One second. That's a minute.
There are four types, four forms of it that you can get to by going to producejustice.com. You'll see it in the textbook, the forms that it takes. And that is black people's biggest drawback when it comes from not only not having a code, but not really being focused on countering and eliminating racism as the reason for being. Whereas the white supremacists, their whole reason for being, for existing, is white supremacy. They have no other reason for even existing. This is why they're in such opposition to anybody changing it. Because if you take white supremacy away from a white person who believes in white supremacy, you've taken everything. You haven't just taken something. And it's the same way with black people. You take away the ability for a black person to show off to another black person, that black person is now suicidal.
Everyone, please go to producejustice.com, develop your own counter racist code so we can produce a system of justice. All right, moving on to this concept here. Very another interesting one, the Dominatrix. And I'm just gonna get it started with Kyra and the hero words. 256. Another very powerful and glaring example of the symbolic connection of Blackness to slavery and servitude is the sexual practice of the Dominatrix. Tradition, ritual, or racial domination. The sexual domination practice uses color and subtle race symbols in plain sight. And if you're paying attention, looking at the screen, it's quite obvious. It's quite obvious that that is correct. And just while these images on the screen, I'm going to continue reading, because I've always, this system is so sick, because when I was in university, this dominatrix, this was promoted on the campuses. I guess free sex, kinky sex, what they were calling it. So this was what was talked about. I remember going to a sex workshop where they were passing around dildos. I'm like, well, I don't know why they're passing this to me. I'm a male. I don't have a use for this. But now that I understand like the anti-sex propaganda and promotion that was going on there, it all makes total sense. But yeah, I'm just gonna read on to what the what all this stuff means. He says the practitioners of this form of sexual gratification unashamedly use language, color, sex, and race codes to express domination and control. And this bizarre behavior, the use of dark colors and dark references, are direct and blatant expressions of color domination. And the practice of this kind of sexual domination, which is often referred to as bondage or sadomasochism in magazines, movies, and in real life interactions, the dominatrix or mistress of bondage is the dominant individual. She is the female equivalent of the master and must be served and strictly obeyed. So he's getting into this just really, really bizarre Urugu psychology. White people, they have a blast and they have an actual, not blast, they have a need for power and control. And I guess when they have that established, sometimes they want to experience what it is like to be dominated and controlled. Even though I've heard some very less confused people decode this aspect here, this concept, dominatrix. It was told to me that it's often thought that the person being like abused during this role play activity, that is the person who is not in control. But the person being abused actually is the person in control, because they set all the limits to like their abuse. And this was I was like, oh, that makes sense, because a lot of non-white females, of course, tragically, do this sort of work, this sort of sex work, where they are paid to abuse mostly white men, but they're still they're led to believe that they're actually and the powerful ones, because they're dominating the white man, but actually the white man is still in power because they set the limits and there's a safe word and there's certain things that can and can't be done. So it's just a really sick illusion that allows the white person to get, I don't know, that sadomasochist energy out. I don't know, that self annihilating aspect that we learned about in the ISIS papers, how they just really treat themselves poorly because they have a really incorrect relationship to their skin and to their bodies. But I may be interpreting that text wrong and just maybe still confused. Folks like to share any of their notes from this portion of the text.
I just wanted to add, I suspect you are not wrong about that. I, much like Dominatrix, I've seen numerous examples of where white people specifically, especially white males, need to feel humiliated in sexual acts. I think the Dominatrix is another example of that. I thought that this section was very interesting. um, in my opinion, this has never ever really made sense to me. This whole dominatrix, this kinky sex category. I don't understand why anyone would want to feel pain, humiliation, or anything like that during the act of sex. I did like on page 257 when he said it gives the impression that a black female is punishing them for the years of injustice. This is probably why black females are hired to act as mistresses in sexual domination games. An increasing number of dominatrix women are big butt black females. The color fantasy sometimes spills over into a need for real life, very black women to administer abuse and humiliation. Confused victims, unfortunately. Is this desire a deep reflection of a guilty conscience that for centuries has enjoyed a racially superior status because of the degradation and abuse heaped on black and red people? I'm going to answer that. I don't know. I could see why someone would suspect that, though. I think white people, I don't even know if white guilt is actually a thing, honestly. But I think white people are just so, what's the word I'm looking for? So insane that they need to feel humiliated when they perform acts of sex because deep down inside, they hate themselves and their skin color. Are these whites acting out a secret desire to be dominated, spit on, and urinated on by people of color? I don't know either, but I suspect that white people know that black people experience things differently. I don't like the word superior.
It's almost like some sort of weird projection. Like,
Yes.
why don't you like the same things that I like? You know, why don't you like to be urinated on? You know, why don't you like to have sex with feces, with animals, with children? Why don't you like to change your gender? I like these things.
Agreed. Is there a deep fear of black domination, and are these games played out to alleviate those trepidations? I think in order for white people, the motivation that they have for continuing to practice racism and dominate black people, non-white people, in all areas of people activity, I think they have to come up with this lie and this fear of black domination. If anything, in my opinion, history has shown that black people have no interest in dominating white people. They just want freedom. They want to be free from oppression. I don't think there's any evidence that shows that black people want to dominate white people, but white people continue to continue that narrative. They continue to spout those lies. This is why there are many magazines that feature the deep fantasies of white males being dominated by black females or females dressed in hard black colors. The white female in black is the dark dominatrix. So I thought that was a pretty good section out of there. The questions, I think can make an individual think about that. Why do white people really? I think, especially black people, non-white people who are engaged in these tragic arrangements. I suspect that there are a number of black people who are having to engage in this kind of activity who are probably embarrassed about it, but for some reason, probably their conditioning and training, they're going to act like it's normal. I mean, surely the media makes it seem like it's normal because they're constantly talking about it. All the characters are dressed like this. Ray shared a great photo if I could put it up. But constantly you're seeing images of people dressed in leather and these kind of sexual dominatrix outfits, and it makes it seem like this kind of behavior, this kind of lust for that stuff is normal, but it absolutely is not. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yahoo said something really interesting in the chat, and greetings to the audience, folks who are listening to this broadcast. Yahoo says it's self-consumption. The Yurugu suffers from constant cellular mutilation through autophage. The inward violent shows outward on us. I'm gonna have to do some research on what autophage is, but very, very interesting, very interesting. I do see, I see what was mentioned, how to, like, their gutter sex, that experimental sex that they like to pretend is sex. I just see that as just being, anti-nature. If you're, I just see it as being anti-nature. It's just what the Yurugu. It's all about going against what is naturally should be, has always been. But hey, we're the Yurugu. We're gonna do our own thing, and it's gonna be very, very bizarre. Just looking at this,
they just want to control our attraction to one another. That's it.
Yeah. And looking at this magazine, this magazine was referenced in a book, but not this particular issue. But this is one that popped up for us, and just this is just so vile. We have if you could see what it says. It says sex and the Ku Klux Klan. Let me taste her meat. Just that whole, like, sex for white people is not the same as it is for non-white people. It's like a aggressive act. It's energy consumption. Whereas for non-white people, it may be some sort of, like, energy sharing. But I'm not a sex doctor or any doctor. I'm just a confused victim trying to solve this problem. And it also says bloodlust, the art of tampon sucking. Now, I can guarantee the art of tampon sucking was not produced by a non-white person. It was certainly produced by a white person, because this is what the Yugu is all about. This right here, these images would not exist if the planet was not dominated by insane people who practice racism and white supremacy. Really, really bizarre. Motivation to solve the problem. Motivation to solve the problem. Hopefully, should be. Or motivation to solve the problem, or leave planet Earth. Cease to exist, because you shouldn't be on this planet unless you're working to eliminate the planet. I mean, you shouldn't be on this planet unless you're working to eliminate the race problem. sole reason for existence. Other than that, you gotta find a planet, different realm of existence. And Yabu says autophagy is a process of the cells regenerating when we sleep. Well, the different types of melanin have different phages. They don't heal when they sleep properly or completely. Interesting. If you could post some more material on this information, that'll be really helpful. Like if you're privy to any books or documentaries or links, please post them in the chat.
Yeah,
Mr.
please do. That's very interesting.
Would be very interesting.
Also, if any, real quickly, if any information can be had as to if that's if that happens more in certain seasons. I don't know about you all, but you know, those summer months are quite different than any other time of the year. That's all I have to say about that.
Interesting. I got a lot of dominatrix and like sexual leather action vibes from the new Batman movie. And also, this picture reminds me, yeah, this is very common. We have just in your face. Only difference in 22 versions that Catwoman is played by a victim of racism, aka a non-white person. But yeah, that film had a lot of just imagery of two people dressed in leather, fighting, but it looked like they were it looked very pleasurable, and there's a lot of grunting and moaning going along with it. So, the audience is supposed to get the idea that this is sexual, because in the racist mind, conflict is pleasurable, sexual for them. So bizarre, dressing up in dark things, makes them probably feel so it makes their existence I don't know, more enjoyable, and then it enhances their gutter sex, possibly. Well, not possibly, but seemingly, because that's why they do it. That's why it's happening every single day. That's why it's $1 billion market of sex toys, of leather suits, and people buying black whips and black dildos.
I think that
all sorts of
it's kind of similar.
All sorts of just madness, And then what Neely Fuller has said, sex is a very powerful, motivating force, and white people have took that idea and ran with it, led us all to a existence of absolute debauchery. Our duty to understand what's happening and encounter it to the best of our abilities, or we shall too remain incorrect. So what else I wanted to get at?
Okay, can you pull up the picture I put in the chat? I put a link in the chat. Helen sent it.
Is it not the one that you see right now with the Batman?
No, it's a different one.
Okay. Yeah, I had a picture queued with this family. This one?
Yes, sir. Interesting.
Did you want to
variety, huh?
Well, Helen wanted us wanted us to share this, and clearly, I think all these females are dressed up in black leather, especially the mom in the back. I think that's what the so-called dominatrix walk in wearing. It's like her daughters are wearing like the revealing clothing. Very, very telling, coming from a family that I think tries to mimic Black people victims of racism and kind of makes fun of them. Very interesting. I've never seen this kind of photo before. I don't know how old or new this photo is, but
Yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah, the suspected white supremacist known as Kim Kardashian is very interesting. She's also on the forefront of like normalizing debauchery and just normalizing horrorism, I'm gonna call it, or just normalizing racism, normalizing depraved acts of racism and white supremacy. And I've noticed that she's been rocking the GIMP aesthetic, the leather aesthetic, in particular, this picture right here I'm referring to. Just total, just wanting that black body, just wanting that black body so much. She got the surgery, but she could never get the color. But this is compensation for that. The black leather, the black items,
What is it that they know that we don't know?
Tragically tons. Tragically. Yeah, so he says a number of really, really interesting things about Dominatrix. But I would urge everyone to go get their copy of Race Cold War, because I can't read the entire book to you, although I would wish I could. So, but if folks want to share any more notes on the Dominatrix before we get to the final topic of the discussion. All righty. All right, so the White House, a word, phrase we've heard our entire existence. I have been existing for 30 years, and it wasn't until I read a couple of pages from a book where I actually thought about, White House, yeah, I guess it is racially coded. I've always known it was called the White House, but hey, it's a White House. They call it a White House. Not everyone's thinking that this is a symbolic name, that could have a number of hidden meanings, hidden in plain sight meanings, actually, if one was actually paying attention to how this world functions and to the way language is used by people who call themselves white. But now, after reading this text, I understand the White House is super, super profound racial symbol. So, and I just want to share these very logical questions that he poses on page 259. One of the most enduring symbols of power and domination in the Western world is the White House. No other color symbol of domination is as blatant or as large. The White House is a symbol of the political and economic domination of white civilization. What does the white and White House really mean? Is it just a color, or does it have a much deeper meaning? And I'm just gonna read. I'm gonna summarize the first paragraph or the second paragraph, where he decodes the White House as being like a representation of just the white settlement. Hey, this is like the most powerful example of a white settlement, and this particular landmass known as the United States, they're in charge, in regards to how this world is going to function in a lot of areas. So that's what the White House represents, one of the most powerful white settlements, aspects of white civilization, basically. And then he says here on page 260, the White House is a symbolic reminder that this land was developed for the advancement of white people. The White House is also a symbol of the most powerful group of white people. All of the major decisions that impact the white world flow through the White House. The effective majority of white people believe in the concept of a White House. For many, this symbol provides a sense of calm and reassurance that everything is all right and under control. Many white people would have tremendous emotional and psychological reactions if the White House were renamed or if it were painted a different color. The White House represents something very different to white people from what it represents to Black people. It is not just a White House, it is a symbol of white civilization. All hell would break loose if someone or some group tried to change the color and name of the White House. This will be like removing the white collective security and stability blanket. So that makes a lot of sense. And I started to think, dang, even in movies, whenever I've seen a movie where like the White House is like destroyed or targeted, it's always a Black person in charge. You know, like, and the movies that come to mind, I think it's Olympus Has Fallen. I think it's Black male president. White House gets attacked. Let me make sure I'm not
the day
just...
after. What you have the day after? Is it the day after tomorrow or 2012? It was one of those movies where Danny Glover was the president.
I don't know if I've seen that one, but I know this one involved. Maybe that's a president. Yeah, no, never mind. But anywho, I don't see many images of the White House being destroyed or ever heard any discussion of what does the White House name mean? Why is it called the White House? No one even says it's called the White House because of the color. It's just not mentioned. You know, it's just that, well, most white people know what it symbolizes, and most non-white people have been, you know, just so confused and just so misdirected that why would we even think about what the hell the White House means? You know, just it's the White House. The president lives there, and that's all we need to know about it. Probably, I may be in error, you know, but I suspect that's how the majority of us have been led to think about the White House.
They want us to think that the white supremacists in the White House operate purely without blemish. They can't afford for anything for us to have any other thought process regarding that.
Yeah, and then he talks about what the White House means to white people, which is very, very significant and should be known by non-white people. Page 260. The White House to most white people means their house and home. It is no accident that the number of white houses far outnumber any other color of houses in the nation. Each white family in the symbolic sense has some identity with the idea of a White House. This is illustrated in many popular cultural sayings and images. One of the most popular cultural symbols is getting married and living in a white house or a house with a white picket fence. Changing of the name to the Black House or Red House would imply to many white people that they are no longer in control and in charge. So, yeah, white picket fence, a nice family home, all relates to maybe we gotta make sure we maintain the system of white supremacy, because that's how we have decided to, maintain all of our comfort. We established this brutal, horrific system that totally destroys, retards the planet and its creatures and people, but we're willing to sacrifice that, for our comfort. So we could go home to a nice, comfortable couch and a fridge full of poison that we call food. And we're gonna maintain this forever, But it's our duty to not allow such a incorrect act to be maintained forever. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to add the White House. I don't know if it was in this book or something else that I read, but it said that the White House looks like a Southern plantation home. So it looks like Master's house on the plantation. I have never actually thought about that, but when that was said, it made so much sense to me. And I think it's completely accurate. Also, the author brings up like attempting to change the name of the White House. What a huge uproar it would cause. And I think that's completely accurate. The White House is a racist symbol for many Black people, non-white people globally. Much like a lot of the things that America was founded upon, like the Constitution. I believe that is also a piece of racist propaganda that needs to be revised, actually completely done away with, and completely redone. But I suspect many white people in this country will not have no intentions of doing that. And I think it just kind of goes hand in hand with white people's motivation to stop practicing racism. I don't think they have any will, they don't have any will. They have no reason to stop it. Just like they have no reason to change the Constitution or change the name of the White House, because for them, it's a win for them. It constantly reminds them, like the author says, it gives them comfort. The name of the White House, that gives them comfort, a white people's haven, safe haven, white people's settlement, the ultimate white people settlement on the planet. So they have no intentions of changing that or getting rid of that, just like they have no motivation to stop practicing racism.
Ray, did you want to chime in?
Yes, quite cool. You have made the statement that you never thought about the White House as a large, plantation house. What do you think about that concept on a planetary scale? The White House looked as the big house on a global scale, being the global big house.
Well, seeing as how America is considered the greatest, most powerful civilization at the moment, I think it sends a message that this is where the masters are that rule the planet, and everybody who is non-white and Black answers to the big house. Hope that answered the question.
Yes, sir, it does. I just asked that because I think it's stupid, silly, primitive, and pitiful for Black people anywhere on the planet, for us to be having these meaningless squabbles, this FBA, ADOS, or just wherever you are on the planet. Like, we're all victims of racism. And it just seems that here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, there's a squabble about what slaves belong to this plantation. It's dumb, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's very silly, but that's a behavior that was given to us by racist man, racist woman, and we have another programming we have to thwart, or it will continue to hold us back from doing what we should be doing. But yeah, I've noticed that as well. I'm not FBA, I'm ADOS. you know, we beefing with the goddamn flag people. It's just ridiculous. You explained it perfectly. You know, whole planet is a plantation just because you're from so-called America, so-called Nigeria, so-called Mozambique. That's all. I guarantee all those places are not how they should be, full of mistreatment, especially full of mistreatment of non-white people. So let's just understand the whole planet is a plantation, prison, cell, and if you know if we can communicate this, please go to producejustice.com, get your copy of the code book, and that may clear up a lot of confusion. And I do appreciate Kyrie and Hero's conclusion on the White House, because again, hammering the nail of exactly what we're dealing with, exactly what these racist symbols mean. Because just these 10 pages, I learned tons, and things that were always in front of me finally revealed themselves to me. The clowns, the White House, the slaves, even though I kind of already got the slave aspect of my existence. And then Dominatrix. Oh yeah, and before we get too far away from it, remember that scene on Pulp Fiction with let me just type it in for everyone. Just the Pulp Fiction. Yeah. Remember this character here from Pulp Fiction who rapes the black male in that film. It was about racism. It was about white.
Another phallic symbol.
Yeah, it's what white supremacy is all about. White people, wanting to feel powerful while mistreating non-white people. It's all about right here. This image says a lot. Actually, this image right here says a lot, but we already covered this. White culture. This is white culture. All right, so back to the White House.
People recognize this. I recognize these as like rituals and ceremonies that white people are constantly putting on, for their acts. Every time they have to mistreat somebody, it's a ritual. It's a ceremony that they perform. I think they've been doing that since slavery, and it just goes back to racism, white supremacy, white people acting like they hate black people, but secretly being in love with them. They have dehumanized black people's rituals and ceremonies, and meanwhile they are performing their own, and all of theirs are to mistreat people classified as black and non-white.
Precisely. All right, so back to 261. Kyrie Nahara concludes on the White House by saying, in order to smooth transitions and continuity, the home environment must be solid and reasonably free of derogatory social situations. With a stable and nurturing environment, the human mind, body, and soul will develop to its highest capacity. When there is chaos and disorder, the minds and behavior of children will reflect that environment. For the majority of white females, the home is a place to nest, to settle, to reproduce, and raise a family. She must have all of the symbolic and psychological trappings to effectively convey the message of the history, development, and survival and future of the race. The White House is the mother of all houses and the nation. It is one of the most powerful and dynamic symbols of whiteness. I was like, damn, it's powerful. White woman, they have the White House as a beacon of inspiration and something to remind them that, hey, I gotta maintain my family, pop out this white child to do my part in maintaining the system of white supremacy. Non-white females, they are directed to the county offices. They don't really have a White House to look to. They don't really have any of that. but I may be incorrect. PurdueJustice.com to get serious about solving this problem.
According to racist logic, I suspect in order for the white women to have this peaceful home and that where no chaos is present, they have to export that chaos to somebody else, to have something to compare to. And they export all of the chaos, destruction towards Black people. Black homes are full of chaos, destruction, etc. As the author mentioned, kids grow up in those, and Black children constantly growing up in those environments, whereas white people get to enjoy peace, tranquility, all at the expense of people classified as Black.
Well said, Quaku. Yeah. Yep. Create global conflicts around the world, and then tell their little white offspring to say, you can have it much worse. You could be like the little brown children being bombed. Being bombed by who? By people like me and you. Yeah, that concludes my notes. Maybe we could get into closing comments. Anyone like to begin?
Constructive business meeting. Looking forward to the next one. That's it for mine.
Very constructive business meeting. This book, Race Code War by Kari Inaharo, is an excellent addition to your counter-racist arsenal. Those are my closing comments.
Thank you both. And Mr. Yahoo, please put that information you mentioned into the Discord. And he also threw in another decoding that I think is very interesting. He says, I suspect since they have always wore animal skin, this is a marketable way to mock the skinny of a victim and wearing the results, a way of conquering the darkness. Very, very interesting. More areas of study one can explore to understand white culture, what white people do, what are they doing, and why are they doing what they're doing. I do hope this was constructive. I do enjoy discussing this text, Race Code War. Very, very constructive. Super useful. I think this information stuff we should have been taught by our attempted parents, but race and white supremacy is very powerful. So it's our duty to, if we're going to procreate, have offspring, by the time they're 2, they should know what a clown means. They should know all 9 areas of people activity, and they should know that they're on this planet to solve the race problem. If you can't make that happen, I'll just say that. But yeah, please like, comment, subscribe, share this information if you thought it was constructive. And if you're able to, support the broadcast with the money white people allow you to have. Yeah, it's CRWS signing out. We'll see you all next week.